What's happening, folks? Welcome back to Celtic Fans TV. Today, we've got something a bit different for you. Celtic have a new number one in Kasper Schmeichel, and he takes over the mantle from his good friend Joe Hart. But what we want to know is he an upgrade on the man he has just replaced? Are Celtic getting better in the goalkeeping department this season? That's what it's all about. We want to know whether Celtic are getting better players than the ones who leave. So to do that, I've gone through all the data on Scout, FotMob and the Premier League website to compare stats across these 5 different areas. They are shot stopping, distribution, crosses, sweeping and penalties. So we're going to look at how the two men compare in all of these categories. And first up is the most important aspect of goalkeeping, shot stopping, so keeping the ball out of the net. If we look at the save percentages for both men, we've got data points here from FotMob and from Scout. So if we start with Kasper Schmeichel, last season in the Belgian First Division for Anderlecht, his save percentage was 79.3%. Joe Hart at Celtic in the Scottish Premiership, 67.8% according to the FotMob data. But more importantly, we have goals prevented. This is the stat that sums up the quality of chances each goalkeeper faced and the number of goals they should have conceded based on the quality of those chances versus the number they actually did concede. So if we start with Joe Hart, his goals prevented in the Scottish Premiership last season were minus 0.07. So that's basically neutral. That means he conceded the number of goals you would expect him to concede based on the quality of chances he faced over the course of the season. If we look at Kasper Schmeichel's goals prevented total in Belgium for Anderlecht, it's an astounding 14.36. That means Kasper Schmeichel conceded nearly 15 goals less than he should have based on the quality of chances that he faced across the season. That means he's making a lot of saves. That means he's saved a number of high quality goal scoring chances from attacking opposition players. And that number is astounding. Now, the important thing to note is that there can be differences between two data platforms. So if we look at the Scout numbers, Joe Hart's goals prevented are minus 0.91, which is slightly worse. We're almost getting towards conceding one goal more than he should have done. If we look at Kasper Schmeichel on Scout, his number is 10.7, so not quite as good as 14.36, but still a big improvement. So that suggests that in terms of shot stopping, Kasper Schmeichel is slightly better than Joe Hart based on last season's figures. Obviously, there's differences there. Joe Hart's playing for Celtic. We won the league. We dominate week in and week out. I think Kasper Schmeichel at Anderlecht, they finished third last season, so they wouldn't have had quite the same dominance that we have, despite the fact they are obviously one of the bigger teams in Belgium. But I think those stats are heavily stacked in favour of Kasper Schmeichel, and it really underlines just how good a shot stopper the Dane is. Next up, it's passing and distribution. Now, this is something that's key. I think I wanted, when Celtic were looking for a new number one, I wanted us to try and find someone more comfortable with the ball at their feet than Joe Hart. Of course, the fundamentals of goalkeeping or shot stopping is keeping the ball at the back of your net. But the way this Celtic team plays, the way the game's changed, the onus on the goalkeeper to be involved in the build-up, passing the ball out for the back, you need somebody who can control it and pass it well, who's calm on the ball. I think at times Joe Hart maybe struggled with that. He maybe looked a wee bit laboured on the ball at times, and you were never full of confidence whenever he had the ball at his feet under pressure at the back. Having said that, to Joe's credit, I don't remember too many high-profile mistakes. But to compare the two players, I've looked at long pass accuracy and short pass accuracy. This data is taken from Scout. So first up, long pass accuracy for Kasper last season. He played 318 long passes. Success rate is 66.7% compared to Joe Hart, who only played 116 long passes with a success rate of 54.3%. Now, a couple of qualifications there. That tells you something about the way Celtic play, and that Joe Hart didn't play a lot of long passes over the course of the league season. Kasper Schmeichel played a lot. That's almost double the number Joe Hart played at Celtic at Anderlecht last season, 318. I would expect him to have to play way less long passes as the Celtic number one than he did at Anderlecht last season. But with almost a 67% success rate, he is slightly more accurate when he has to go longer than Joe Hart was at Celtic last season. If we go over to short pass accuracy, they're very, very similar. Kasper Schmeichel played 613 in the course of the season, success rate 98.2%, and Joe Hart 808 with 98.6% success rate. So Hart slightly better in the short passing accuracy. And again, you see that difference of almost 200 short passes more for Joe Hart. Again, that points towards the Celtic style. And I would expect Kasper Schmeichel to have to play a lot more short passes as the Celtic number one in this coming season. So there's not too much to separate them there. Now, I know a lot of you prefer the eye test to the data points, and so do I. And I've watched a lot of Kasper Schmeichel. Obviously, he's a household name in European football. We're all familiar with him, but I've even gone through a lot of Y-Scout clips in terms of his shot distribution. And I think he appears to me slightly calmer in possession of the ball than Joe was. Again, we'll see how that plays out. When you watch a player for 90 minutes for your own team, you're always hypercritical, you're always more aware of every mistake they make, every touch they take, whereas when you're watching a goalkeeper for another team that you don't have any emotional investment in, you're always likely to not take in as much, to be a wee bit more lenient. But I think there's not too much to split them on that. I think Kasper does look a wee bit calmer, and that long passing accuracy is a little bit better. So maybe in European games, if he has to clip one out to a full-back or to a wide player on a counter-attack, he'd be a wee bit more confident and I'm finding his teammate than you necessarily were with Joe, but not too much to separate them in terms of distribution. Let's see how it plays out though, because this is just data, and I'm looking forward to seeing Kasper Schmeichel for Celtic and seeing the differences in terms of that build-up out from the back, him playing it to centre-halves and to full-backs, and how swift we can progress the ball up the pitch, and if he helps us in that area. Right, next up it's crosses, and this is something that was obviously contentious over Joe Hart's different spells in Joe Hart's Celtic career. His ability to catch crosses, he was very prone to punching. He clearly felt more comfortable punching the ball than collecting it. I think that's something that's common across goalkeeping now. I think they feel safer punching the ball and just getting out of danger than taking the risk of lifting their arms to try and catch it. And then if they take a bit of contact and drop the ball, there's a chance it could lead to a goal. So I think going back to last season when Joe Hart was when the team was having a sticky spell and Joe Hart was having a sticky spell also, that game against Hearts at Celtic Park where they beat us 2-0, there's a range of crosses that he came for that day, and he elected to punch almost every single one, to the complete bemusement of the crowd, if you remember. And that was the day where he eventually caught a cross late on, and there was ironic cheers, which I think were obviously really, really harsh on him. But there is, I think, a consensus that Joe Hart isn't the most commanding in terms of coming out and collecting the ball. Now, if we look at high claims, this is the data taken from Football. If we look at high claims last season, Kasper Schmeichel had 22 in Belgium. For us in the Scottish Premiership, Joe Hart had 19, so there's not a lot to separate them at all there. Only 3, and again, you've got to take into consideration the dominance that Celtic have over the course of most domestic matches, and how that compares to the dominance that Anderlecht have. How many crosses did Anderlecht have to face over last season? Almost certainly more than Celtic did in domestic league matches, so there's almost nothing separating them there. Again, on Y-Scout, I went through a lot of exits, they call them, which are the clips where the goalkeeper has left his goal line to come and collect a ball, come and punch a ball. And I think Kasper appears to punch it less. If you look at their Premier League career as well, now I know this is nuanced by the fact that Joe Hart was probably in his peak for a lot of his Premier League appearances. I think he had 340, where Kasper's only had 280, 284, I think, for Schmeichel. And I know this takes in the period of Joe Hart's career where he was really at his peak. But if you look at the punches per game in the Premier League over their time there, Joe Hart had 0.79 punches a game. Kasper Schmeichel only 0.42. So I think Kasper is much less prone to punching, and hopefully that means that he can relieve the pressure more on his defence this season when it comes to collecting crosses. I think that's something we would all like to see. And as I say, I think that's one of the areas of Joe Hart's game that caused us some concern last season. So let's hope when we see Kasper in the goals for Celtic, he can come and collect the ball and take that pressure off his defence. Right, next up it is sweeping. Now, this is, if you don't know what this means, this is obviously where the keeper comes off of his goal line to play a sweeper role. We saw Joe Hart do it last season, sometimes effectively, sometimes not so effectively. If you remember that game at Livingston, where he was sent off, he was just late to the ball, and I think Nubly got there before him. He committed the foul just on the edge of the box, and he received a straight red card. There was a couple of games though towards the end of the season, really when he hit that sort of purple patch of form in the last 2-3 months of the season, Joe Hart, where there was moments in games where he acted as a sweeper keeper, as they call it, very effectively. Now, in my head, again, just watching Kasper Schmeichel over the years, this is the one area of his game that I think Joe Hart maybe pipped him on. I think Joe Hart maybe is slightly better, but let's look at what the data suggested. So going by the FOTMOB data last season, Kasper acted as a sweeper 9 times over the course of the league campaign. Joe Hart acted sweeper for Celtic 13 times. Now again, that is a slight increase. 9 to 13 is quite a big percentage jump. In terms of the percentiles in each league, they're not anywhere near the top, as you would expect, playing for teams who tend to dominate week in and week out. Us more so than Anderlecht, but again, Anderlecht, one of the stronger teams in the Belgian league. So that is slightly tipped in favour of Joe Hart in terms of the number of times he acted as sweeper. If we look at the Premier League data, again, the 284 appearances for Kasper, 340 for Joe. Number of sweeps per game is 0.56 for Kasper Schmeichel, and it's 0.53 for Joe Hart. So Kasper slightly ahead there. Now, of course, like all data, you've got to take this with a pinch of salt. There's numerous qualifications. Obviously, Kasper spent most of his time in the Premier League with Leicester. He was there for 11 years. And yes, they did win the Premier League, and they had spells where they were competing in the top 4. But over that 11 years, their league position was generally lower than the teams that Joe Hart played for, spending the chunk of his Premier League career at Man City, where they were winning titles and competing in the top 4 season in and season out. So you've got to think about that in terms of the differences of how those teams play. And Kasper is a little bit ahead there, but there's not too much in it. There's not too much separating that. That's something that I'm keen to see. I think, again, in my head, just based on watching both keepers over the years, I feel like Joe might be slightly better when he has to come out and read the game and sweep up for his defence. We'll see how it plays out this season with Kasper, but not too much to separate them in that area at all. Right, last up it is penalties. Now, this is obviously something that through spells in his Celtic career, people were questioning Joe Hart about his ability to save penalties, and that's unfair because a goalkeeper can never really be expected to save a penalty. But I think he did have a prolonged run at Celtic without saving one. He had 2 brilliant penalty saves last season, though, both in the Champions League. One away at Feyenoord, one against Atletico Madrid. I think Griezmann put in the rebound though, in that game at Celtic Park. But if we look at their record over their career, Kasper Schmeichel has faced 111 penalties. He has saved 25, which is a 22.5% save rate. Joe Hart has faced 74, saving 15. So Joe Hart's actually faced considerably less penalties over the course of his career. Again, that's maybe thinking about the teams that he's played for. 15 saves and 74 penalties is a 20.2% save rate. So Kasper slightly pips it on penalties and the success rate in saving penalties. So there you go. Not a great deal in it, but Kasper has saved slightly more penalties in percentage terms that he's faced throughout his career. So there you go. That's the 5 areas that I looked at. You can let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you think Kasper Schmeichel will be an upgrade on Joe Hart? Do you think that we'll get stronger in that goalkeeping department this season. From your time watching Kasper Schmeichel over the years, do you have any concerns about his game? Let me know in the comments below. Let me know as well if this is a style of video that you like. We can do more of this stuff as we go through the transfer window and we bring players in, whether they're replacing Celtic players who are on the way out, or we can even compare them to other Celtic players in their position and look at the key stats and try and gauge what we might see going forward from the different players that we bring in this summer. So let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Please don't forget to subscribe. As I say, we're bringing you more content than we ever have before this season. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.